Hey guys, welcome back! Let's continue to dive into my favorite DOS games year by year, and let me tell you, 1993 was yet another incredible year in PC gaming. In fact, one of the best years in gaming, if not the best ever, to be honest. So, and with that in mind, here's my 10 most played DOS games from 1993 that I simply couldn't stop playing. Let's take a look. Bear in mind that for this one I had to leave out of the top 10 a ton of other amazing games, 20 more to be precise, that I'm now gonna showcase and that you must also check out. Simon the Sorcerer, Prince of Persia 2 The Shadow and the Flame, Prehistoric 2, The Lost Vikings, Lemmings 2 The Tribes, The Legend of Kyrandia The Hand of Fate, The Incredible Machine, Gabriel Knight Sins of the Fathers, Pinball Dreams, The Seventh Guest, Alone in the Dark 2, Betrayal at Krondor, Duke Nukem 2, IndyCar Racing, Mortal Kombat, Network Q RAC Rally, Police Quest 4 Open Season, Populous 2 Trials of the Olympian Gods, Quest for Glory 4 Shadows of Darkness, and Lotus 3 The Ultimate Challenge. All these were that close to be promoted to this year's top 10, so consider them as honorable mentions and a sort of top 30. With that said, let's begin.
Star Wars X-Wing.
Star Wars X-Wing was such a huge deal for me back in 1993. I would load the game up just to see that intro and listen to its music. This was the start of my addiction for Star Wars related games, and you can watch my documentary on Lucasfilm Games and LucasArts to get to know every single Star Wars game that ever existed, and all others coming from that incredible developer. This was the starting point for realistic space combat within the Star Wars universe, where we would have the chance to fly X-Wings, A-Wings and Y-Wings. A dream come true for many fans of the movie franchise like me. By November of 93 came also Rebel Assault, but because of it being a rail shooter, didn't grab me that much. It didn't even make it to the honorable mentions. The game casts us as a rookie rebel pilot, flying missions over the course of 3 tours of duty leading up to the battle against the Death Star. Missions range from solitary patrols to intense operatic battles with fleets of Star Destroyers. All those years developing combat flight simulators came indeed to fruition with Star Wars X-Wing, the team behind Battlehawks 1942, their finest Hare and secret weapons of the Luftwaffe, gained the amount of experience needed to finally bring this gem. That was one of the first titles that I played on my brand new IBM PS1 and ended up completely addicted to it. The feeling of being at the controls of one of those iconic spacecrafts, performing all sorts of missions and engaging TIE fighters was mind-boggling. Even now, X-Wing is so damn enjoyable to play. It was the first Star Wars title to be published by LucasArts, and one of the first simulation games to include 3D polygon graphics for spaceships, instead of less detailed bitmap graphics that were normally used in flight simulators. It went on being one of the best-selling PC games of 1993.
Sam & Max Hit the Road.
As you know, I'm a sucker for classic point-and-click adventure games, and Sam & Max Hit the Road was another one of those titles that grabbed me back in 1993, the year when I got this mighty 486 IBM PC. I simply had to try my new rig with all the brand new games that were being published, and at school we would copy tons of floppies at the computer class. Even the teacher wanted a slice of that pie. And with this particular one, we also needed to have the manual to be able to access the game entirely. So, over at the reprint room, we simply took photocopies from each other's already photocopied manuals, and that's it! As simple as that. Sam & Max Hit the Road was based on the original 1987 comic book series by Steve Purcell and sees us investigating the mysterious disappearance of Bruno the Bigfoot and Trixie the Giraffe Neck Girl from a carnival freak show. That mission is assigned to a couple of freelance police officers, a naked and hyperactive bunny named Max, and a dog named Sam. Two LucasArts trademarks were present in Sam & Max, the delicious humor, and as well their unique design rule to never let the player die. More or less. This way players didn't have to worry about constantly saving their game. We directly control Sam, though Max will usually follow closely behind and is even available to use directly as an item in the inventory. Sam is able to be directed anywhere on the screen, look at objects, try to use objects, try to speak to objects, and use items from his inventory on objects. Yeah. Sam & Max must unravel the mystery piece by piece in order to unlock new locations on their map. So our journey to find the missing freaks is a countrywide tour across the United States with locations linked together by highways that includes such diverse stop-offs as the world's largest ball of twine, Mount Rushmore's Dinosaur Fun Park, and the surrealistic Mystery Vortex. The story hots up very nicely along the way, culminating in an unforgettable encounter with a whole convention full of Bigfoots, Yeti, and the rest of their family. A sequel named Sam & Max Freelance Police was developed but cancelled back in March of 2004 because LucasArts thought it was, and I quote, not the appropriate time to release a graphic adventure game on the PC. Despite many petitions and negative feedback about the cancellation, the game was not put back into production. During the 80s and 90s, Lucasfilm and LucasArts was always my go-to company, so, and along with X-Wing, Sam & Max took a lot of my free time, and it was totally worth it. What a game!
Flashback.
Flashback is known for being the best-selling French game of all time. It was a phenomenon when it debuted on the Commodore Amiga in December of 1992, prior to the release for IBM-compatible PCs, and it remains a fascinating experience even today. It incorporates elements of platforming, shooting, and problem-solving, and can be described as a cinematic platformer, Prince of Persia style, following a design philosophy that was also demonstrated in Another World, also from Delphine Software. Compared to that one, Flashback focuses more on platforming and exploration of large levels. We play as Conrad, and to defend ourselves, we can shoot enemies with our gun and also use various objects to harm or distract them. Crouching and rolling are possible and essential moves that can be executed during combat. The gun has unlimited ammunition, however, shields are depleted when we're hit and can be recharged at special stations. Though most environments in the game are hostile, there are a few locations that are devoid of enemies, where it's usually required to talk to characters, gather information, and complete tasks in an adventure-like fashion. All this technical and game design cleverness would be for naught if the game didn't have a decent story at the heart of it, and Flashback's tale of alien infiltration and forced amnesia is superb. It juggles action with atmosphere and delivers a game that is both intriguing and tense. Most of the versions utilize cutscenes with polygonal vector graphics, but the CD versions replace those with pre-rendered 3D animations. The Sega CD version even features voiceovers. This particular version was later adapted to PC CD-ROM, 3DO and CDI. Even though the Amiga version was the first one to arrive, it was a port from the original platform, which was the Mega Drive. Yeah. Sega's version only arrived a few months later, in the spring of 1993, soon followed by the PC, Acorn Archimedes and the Super Nintendo, this last one slightly censored. Another curious fact was that the zoom-in option, displayed whenever Conrad opens fire, is exclusive to the PC and Amiga. It was simply removed from all other versions.
Syndicate.
1993 was the year when my life as a gamer changed completely. Due to my academic choices, I had to embrace the PC with arms wide open and leave my Amiga 500 behind. So, and with the precious help from my parents, I bought this mighty IBM PS1 486 DX2 running at 66 MHz to give that extra boost in performance, mostly in games. Yeah, I told my parents that the machine was to help me with college, and it slightly was, but the Intel 486 DX2 was a true beast for gaming and the first processor to specifically delve into that amazing world that was rapidly emerging on home computing. And that was when I came across Syndicate, this futuristic cyberpunk real-time tactical game from Bullfrog, where we have to perform missions that range from rescuing captured allies, persuading scientists and civilians to join our cause, kill leaders of rival syndicates, etc. And while the game progresses, we must try and stay ahead of the latest breakthroughs in what weaponry and cyborg enhancements are concerned. The gameplay is visually reminiscent of XCOM, with an angled top-down perspective, but it is real-time rather than turn-based. We have missions ranging from infiltrate and capture to seek and destroy. In each of these, we direct a team of 4 agents as they move through the world shooting at anything that gets in their way. In pre-release versions of the game, the series apparently also featured mothers with baby carriages and dogs. These extra innocents were removed from the game before its release, and because of all of this, Syndicate ended up annoying a lot of people back then. It can be indeed completely disrespectful to the morality of our society. But that's just what attracted players in the first place. Peter Molyneux had some guts to produce and convince the publisher to release such an ultra-violent strategy game. The publisher's boss was Trip Hawkins. All good then. And it can indeed be extremely addictive. Once we've got through the first mission, we'll want to play another, and another, with that brilliant mixture of strategy, action and firepower. Yeah! In 1994 came an expansion disc, Syndicate American Revolt, that introduced the multiplayer capability of the game that was removed in this original from 1993, and by 1996, the proper and much anticipated sequel Syndicate Wars was released for PC and a year later for the PlayStation. Back to the original, the one that started all the mayhem. It was ported to a lot of systems, but the DOS version is, with no doubt, the one that everyone should play.
Epic Pinball.
2 years before becoming Digital Extremes, James Schmalz developed Epic Pinball in 9 months while still in college, using Deluxe Paint 2 for the graphics and Scream Tracker for the music. And the soundtrack is absolutely amazing, just listen to it! James was inspired by the work of a Finnish PC demo group known as Future Crew, that by that time were creating some of the most impressive 3D demos for MS-DOS based PCs. A fun fact is that the members of this Finnish demo group, the so-called Future Crew, were approached by Tim Sweeney and Mark Rain from Epic Mega Games with a recruitment offer, which the group kindly refused. Let me remind you that Tim Sweeney is the CEO of Epic Games and the creator of the Unreal Engine, and Mark Rain is just vice president of Epic Games. So in short, Epic Pinball was born from the inspiration on an unfinished pinball game from the Finnish demo group Future Crew that declined Epic Mega Games' offer to finish it. It was published under the Epic Mega Games label and exclusive to DOS machines, and I believe that every PC gamer back in 1993 played this one, cause it was distributed as shareware with only the famous Android table available to play. And I've played the crap out of it! The complete game was composed of 3 different packs, with each pack containing 4 tables. So in total, we had the astonishing number of 12 completely different tables, being Enigma the weirdest one. But by 1993, only the first 2 packs were available. The game is played seen from a 2D top-down view within a scrollable window with plain raster graphics in 320 by 240. It was noted for being programmed entirely in assembly language for MS-DOS systems and originally distributed on floppy disks in those aforementioned 3 separate packs of 4 tables each. The original shareware version and this early retail version we're looking at included the original Android table. Later shareware versions and retail versions contained an updated table called Super Android, although it's still referred to as Android in the game's menu. Epic Pinball ended up being the publisher's top-selling shareware game ever, and James Schmalz earned more than $1 million from the shareware royalties in its first year alone.
Cannon Fodder.
Pronouncing this game's title to my friends was so damn funny back in school by the time it was released, cause removing one of the D's on the second word of Cannon Fodder is a bit on the naughty side when pronouncing Portuguese. Back in those days we were just innocent and curious kids, you know? So, Cannon Fodder was another game originally released for the Amiga and later ported to the PC and other systems. This one I only played on DOS back in the day, and only many years later I managed to try the Amiga original. That is the best, I must add. But even so, my first contact with this game was, as said, with the PC version, so this version is indeed the one that really means something to me and keeps the nostalgia levels sky high. In it, we must guide a team of up to 6 soldiers through 72 levels of combat in this top-down action strategy hybrid, best thought of as Lemmings crossed with Commando crossed with Dune 2. The characters are controlled indirectly using the mouse or a joypad if you happen to have one of those on your PC back in those days. We activate each soldier or group of soldiers by highlighting them, clicking one button on the mouse to move them to a particular spot and the other button for them to fire guns at the enemy. We can also pick up grenades or rockets that can be fired by pressing both mouse buttons at once, which can be handy on destroying a large group of soldiers, buildings or even some vehicles. Each mission has a specific objective and some feature vehicles such as tanks that are used to make things easier. Our troops can cross water but can't shoot within it, so finding and controlling bridges is often crucial. We can use the arrangement of trees to find hiding places to shoot from and should watch out for NPC soldiers doing the same. Cannon Fodder has a darkly humorous tone which was praised and condemned by many reviewers. Its creators intended it to convey an anti-war message, which some critics recognized but others ridiculed, like the Daily Star and a number of public figures. Even so, many reviewers highly praised the game, which widely achieved scores of over 90% in many magazines. It will forever be remembered for its singular sense of humor, beginning with a theme tune entitled "War Has Never Been So Much Fun," and ending each level by showing the graves of fallen comrades. Cannon Fodder is a sniggering satire on the glorification of war, with an underlying pacifist message.
SimCity 2000.
I absolutely love SimCity 2000. It was a huge leap forward in relation to its successor. This one is now played from an isometric perspective, as opposed to the original, which was played from a top-down perspective. The objective of the game is to create a city, develop residential and industrial areas, build infrastructure such as power and water facilities, and collect taxes for further development of the city. Importance is put on increasing the standard of living of the population, maintaining a balance between the different sectors, and monitoring the region's environmental situation to prevent the settlement from declining and going bankrupt, as extreme deficit spending gets a game over. It adds numerous features over the previous title, such as the ability of building light zones, subways, hospitals, colleges, zoos, and arcos, which are actually cities in cities. We can now give names to places, and our city is surrounded by neighboring towns with which we can trade goods. Finally, instead of the poll in the first game, we now have the option of reading several newspapers to get an idea of our progress. The budget and finance controls are also much more elaborate. Tax rates can be set individually for residential, commercial and industrial zones. The budget controls are very important in running the city effectively. The game also included several playable scenarios, in which, for instance, we must deal with a disaster and rebuild the city to meet a set of victory conditions. These were based in versions of real-life cities, and some were based on real events, such as the Oakland firestorm of 1991, the 1989 Hurricane Hugo in Charleston, the Great Flood in 1993 in Davenport, or dealing with the 1970s economic recession in Michigan, but also included more fanciful ones, such as a monster destroying Hollywood in 2001. If Hollywood was New York, I would assume that the monster was Bin Laden taking down the Twin Towers. Will Wright and his crew were having some sort of prediction back in 1993, I guess. SimCity 2000 was critically praised for its vibrant and detailed graphics, improved control menu, gameplay and music. Over 4 million copies were sold, and while its predecessor pioneered the city-building genre of video games, SimCity 2000 would become the model upon which subsequent urban simulators would be based over the course of the next decades.
Fury of the Furries.
Oh man, how I love Fury of the Furries! Played it first on my Amiga 500, but by the time I got my IBM PC, I also had to get a copy of the DOS version of this highly enjoyable and addictive puzzle and platform title that later, and outside Europe, was known as Back in Time. By the way, and about that name change, a collaboration with the Japanese group Namco led to the release, sometime around '94, of Fury of the Furries in other regions besides Europe, like Canada and the United States, but as said, under the name Back in Time. So for that partnership, the changes were superficial, and they only bothered transforming the main furry character into Pac-Man, the coins into pills, and remake the intro, giving it a story and objective. But enough about that. If you wanna know more, check my history video on Fury of the Furries. So, in the original and better title, we control a furry creature that has the ability to transform itself into 4 different colored forms: red, blue, green and yellow. Colors that indicates different skills that are needed at certain points during our journey across the 8 main locations present in the game: desert, lagoon, forest, pyramids, mountains, factory, village and the castle, each with 10 levels plus bonus levels. But not all forms are available in all the different levels. In those more puzzle-oriented, we may come across fields which deactivate certain powers. Besides the amazing gameplay, it also offers awesome music, graphics and even references to other video games and movies. Strange is that in the box, these creatures are known as furries and in-game as tinies. I guess that Fury of the Tinies sounded weird for some reason. As mentioned, its mechanics are centered around switching between the 4 different colors that indicates a specific special ability. The yellow form controls the elements of fire, allowing us to throw fireballs. The blue form controls the element of water, allowing the ability to swim and dive underwater, along with the power of shooting bubbles that can damage the enemies. The green form controls the element of air, allowing not only the use of a sort of grappling hook to swing across the environment, but also to pull objects. Finally, the red form controls the element of earth, offering the ability to chew across walls and ground. As said, various obstacles and enemies must be overcome along the way, and the key to success was the correct use of the right ability at the exact moment, as required. Even having this awful and at the same time strange cover art, Fury of the Furries is a masterpiece and considered as one of the best games ever made for PC. Everyone should try it, if you're in the mood for some relaxing puzzle platforming, obviously.
Day of the Tentacle.
Now here's the sequel to the title, credited for being the very first point-and-click graphic adventure. Maniac Mansion set the tone for things to come, and Day of the Tentacle was the pinnacle of craziness and weirdness in the genre. Day of the Tentacle isn't just an adventure game, it's a mix of that ingredient with comedy, strong characters, puzzles, love, and different worlds packed with different stuff. Day of the Tentacle is all that and much more.
Makes me feel great.
There's 3 different characters working together in the past, present and the future to defeat the evil purple tentacle that is trying to
Take on the world.
We control Bernard and later also Hoogie and Laverne, being able to switch between them at any time. By using the commands at the bottom of the screen, the character can pick up items, use them on other things, talk to people and more. Any of the 3 friends can also send his items across time to another friend. The game takes place in the same area, but in 3 different eras, and thus affecting history takes a vital part in some puzzles. For instance, Hoogie can hide an item in the 18th century, and Laverne discovers it in the 23rd century. But by then, the item may have been affected by time and changed its properties. Besides all that, there's a bit of American history depicted in this game's past that was quite complicated to come around back then, cause yeah, my teacher was more focused in Portuguese history and ancient civilizations, but hey, don't let that little bit scare you. Otherwise, you'll be missing out on one of the most beautiful graphic adventure games ever created that was even remastered a few years ago.
I don't wanna know.
Dave Grossman returned after showing all his writing skills in The Secret of Monkey Island, and once again, and along with Tim Schafer, wrote this overwhelming story where we have to solve puzzles whilst traveling through time, exploring different periods of history in an attempt to stop the evil purple tentacle from again
Take on the world.
It was first released on floppy disks, with voice acting present only on cutscenes. That was a really complicated task to technically accomplish with success. So that you guys can have an idea, the whole game with animations, sounds and the SCUM engine is as big as this JPEG that is scrolling up the screen, that has around 8 megs. But they've managed to pull it off, and alongside the floppy release, there was also a CD-ROM version with voice acting throughout the whole game. Just like Fury of the Furries, Day of the Tentacle has also a ton of references to other video games and movies, and even to the Commodore 64, that was the computer for which the original Maniac Mansion was first released, and we can even play it inside the game on a C64 present in Weird Ed's room. Amazing!
I've lost it.
What can I say about the original Doom that hasn't been already said over and over? After Commander Keen and Wolfenstein 3D, Doom was the third major independent release by id Software. He'd started developing a darker game focused on fighting demons with technology, using a new 3D game engine from the lead programmer John Carmack. The designer Tom Hall initially wrote a science fiction plot, but he and most of the story were removed from the project, with the final game featuring an action-heavy design by John Romero and Sandy Peterson. Those disputes with the Johns over the direction to take with Doom made Tom leave id Software in August of that year to join Apogee, a company that had become well renewed in the market for its highly successful shareware distribution philosophy, and as you know, came to be known as 3D Realms in later years. Tom was later the game designer for Rise of the Triad, produced Terminal Velocity, and helped in varying degrees on Duke Nukem 2 and Duke Nukem 3D as well. So id Software published Doom as a set of 3 episodes under that same Apogee-style shareware model, marketing the full game by releasing the first episode for free. A retail version with an additional episode was published 2 years later by GT Interactive as The Ultimate Doom. Doom is simply one of the best and most influential video games of all time. It immediately caught the attention of gamers thanks to its superbly atmospheric lighting effects and incredible level design. But that wasn't all. Even that initial opening humble pistol is as much iconic as the big f***ing gun 9000 and the brilliant and satisfying chainsaw. The varied enemies that are thrown at us keep the game tense and exciting, with new tactics being needed to defeat each horrific monster we come across. It was so groundbreaking and engaging that led to countless other FPSs that came after being referred to as Doom clones, and we can still feel its influence in all modern day shooters. Doom has been converted to run on all sorts of hardware throughout the years, from computers and consoles to even ATMs and pregnancy tests. After the Can It Run Crisis Fever came Can It Run Doom, that even has its dedicated website. Doom marked, with no doubt, a significant shift in the gaming industry back in 1993 that is still being praised and felt today over 30 years later. So guys, here you have it, the 10 games plus 20 honorable mentions released back in 1993 that I spent the most time with. Tell me down in the comments section which ones have you played, and feel free to share your personal favorites from that particular year. I would love to know, cause I'm positive that I'll discover a ton more just by reading your feedback. In the meantime, if you've enjoyed this episode, you know the drill. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you all in my next video. Cheers!